Hey guys, welcome. Welcome to Future Proof in Melbourne. We are going to have 3 really great panel chats in this room tonight. I just want to start off by introducing myself. My name's Jane Ryan. I'm going to be hosting the panels. I'm a drinks writer, content creator, marketer, etc., etc. And I'm really delighted to be joining for the first panel. We're going to be talking all about brand for the next half hour, and we're going to be delving into brand as we know it, so the liquid, but also we're going to look at brand in terms of venue groups, and also a little bit of personal branding, so really should apply to hopefully everyone in this room. And I am joined here by Daisy Tulley. So Daisy is the general manager for Macho Group up in Sydney. You probably would have definitely heard of their venues, Cantina OK, Bar Planet, which is my local luckily, and a plethora of other really, really great and very individual venues. We've also got David Vitale here. He's the founder of Starwood, obviously a really strong brand in Australia that has taken, I guess, what it means to be Australian and gone global. So we are very delighted to have you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I want to start with quite a broad question for you, Daisy, which is really just drilling down into the essence of like what is brand in our industry. And so for me, when I think of an example, like, is it when I tell someone about your venues and that one line I use to sum them up? So
that one-liner is what you get to after doing a whole load of work about branding. So to zoom out, I suppose what a brand or branding is, in my experience, and I'm general manager of Mucho, but then I was marketing for about 6 years at Mucho, is writing a really in-depth kind of brand document before you start a venue. And that brand document kind of is broken down into kind of 5 different areas. And you ask yourself a lot of questions. And this is how you kind of determined what your brand is. So a brand is not a physical product. You know, it's not a venue. It's the community. It's the persona. It's the culture, the morals around it. But a practical tip for all of you guys is that I actually say a brand is kind of built up of brand pillars, and there's 5 different brand pillars, and they all start with P.
Let's have them.
First one is purpose. So it can't be money related, but it's got to be a true purpose of why you're creating this brand. So if we want to use Bar Planet as an example, Bar Planet, the whole reason we opened Bar Planet was to casualise the martini and also bring joy and something different to Enmore Road that we thought that Enmore Road, I suppose, needed, or we were willing to try. Then a personality to your brand. So you kind of break down, or I suppose create, what kind of person would my brand be? And if you use Bar Planet again as another example, Bar Planet I think would be like maybe a inner west hipster wearing thick glasses and wears clothes from Inku and Vinnie's and likes to eat at Bubba's, and you know what I mean? You can build a whole person of what Bar Planet would look like and how Bar Planet would speak and who Bar Planet would interact with, where Bar Planet would shop. So then there's the personality of your brand. Then there's the perception of your brand. So how you want people to perceive your brand. Do they want to think of you as a premium product, a community bar, or a top 50 best bar, or how do they want to perceive your brand? Promotion, how you're going to promote your brand. So with Bar Planet, social media, it's obviously more of a neighbourhood, community bar. So it's going to be more kind of community-led influencers, social media, TikTok. It's progressive. We're not going to be doing poll posters. We're not going to be doing TV ads. You know what I mean? You understand kind of the promotion around it, and then you ask yourself a few questions around the position of your brand. So where does your brand sit? And what position? So are you, fine dining, or are you more casual or expensive, or where does your brand sit in the community of brands? And once you go through all that whole process and write a huge brand document, then you get to kind of distilling down to that one-liner of the Enmore Road Martini Bar, and that one-liner gets used everywhere.
And that's brand.
That was a really long explanation. But
No.
that's a brand to me.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously, David, you've gone and built a brand. Everyone who's sipping the new old-fashioned has tasted the brand. Why should they care what brand of whiskey they're drinking?
That's a great question. I think that with whiskey, let's face it, no one in the world needs another whiskey on their bar. So brand is critically important in that case because, you know, all of the bourbons and scotches that exist are well crafted, have amazing quality, more often than not more cost effective than Starward is. So if we're not turning up with like a compelling reason to exist and having permission to be on the bar, then we've got a real problem on our hands. And so with Starward, I guess what we wanted to do is really capture, like great whiskies do, the essence of the place it's made and bring that to life. As much in the ingredients, you know, we age in wine barrels a day's drive away, and all the malted barley and wheat that we use is local, and the climate, Melbourne's 4 seasons in a day, that's all part of it from a process perspective. But, you know, that is definitely not the Martini Bar on Enmore Road kind of answer. And so, you know, we want to really kind of bring to life the culture of Melbourne and the culture of Australia in what we're doing, which is that sense of adventure, the sense of boundless possibilities. You know, we have the loosest regulations in the world when it comes to making whiskey, and we take that seriously in terms of making something really well crafted, but equally do stuff that Scotch and bourbon can't, because we have that, and because we're adventurous and come from a place that, you know, celebrates that sort of freedom to explore.
Do you think, sorry, I'm just going to build on that quickly, that kind of going back to what Daisy was saying though, that says something about the drinker then? Like all those attributes that you've just listed, that means if I resonate with that, I care about your brand?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, one of the things that early on got me captivated by whiskey and the opportunity to make it whiskey was that I was a craft beer drinker, and I felt like that if I could fall in love with whiskey, which at that point in time really was Grandpa's drink, then maybe other craft beer drinkers could fall in love too. Like craft whiskey wasn't even a word back then. So turning up on the drinker's terms is a critical part of like creating a brand and connecting with them. I think that, you know, coming back to your point earlier, it's not just one part of, it's not just the whiskey that makes the brand. It's not the label that's a brand. A lot of people used to say, I love your brand, and just point to the label. And it's like, well, that's really important because that does a lot of the talking when I'm not around. But it's so much more than that. It's the whole world.
Yeah. Daisy, when you're making brands, thinking about brands, what do you think people are looking for in 2024? If we're here at an event called Future Proof, like how do you survive in 2024 as a brand?
I think that people are looking for a few things. I think they're looking for connection. We're really deprived of connection. We all know this. You know, we're kind of community deficient these days. So a lot of our, I suppose, branding or marketing comes back to the person and the story behind the person, and kind of that, that connection that people can have with the venue or the bartender themselves. I think that people are looking for authenticity, which is, I know that lots of people say that, but in a world full of so much content, I think the only way you do break through is when you're truly authentic. And being truly authentic is having a purpose that's not money related. Like we honestly are passionate about bringing exciting and joyful experiences to Sydney and doing something really interesting and different. And when that's your purpose, it can't not be authentic, the content. People sit me down all the time and they go, how do you produce all this? How do you guys do this? And I'm like, well, we truly believe in the product and our purpose, and that creates the authentic experience. The third thing that I think that people are really looking for is a sense, well, they're not looking for it, I don't think, but what is, at the moment is big is a sense of FOMO. Whether you like it or not, everyone wants what everyone else has. So that experience of watching someone shaving ice at Cantina OK or pouring that Perron at Bar Planet and watching it on social media, they want a piece of that too. So they'll come into the bar, they'll film that, they'll post that. But yeah, FOMO, connection, and being authentic, I think, is what people want.
Yeah, I feel like feeling authenticity in a venue. I mean, I go to your venues and I interact with your staff and I feel that. How does that translate for you, David, in terms of I'm going into Dan Murphy's and buying a bottle of Starward? How can you make me feel like I'm dealing with a people business?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of whiskey distilleries are people and places, right? And so there's inherited sense of authenticity in people and places, particularly when they're not made up, and most of them aren't, right? They're real people. John Walker was a person, and William Grant is a person. And so, like, you could, it's very audacious then to step outside of that kind of people, places, and animals construct. But actually, what felt authentic to us was to not do that, to not be another person, place, or animal. And so, to your point earlier, there's an element of Starward that once you connect with the brand, it all sort of makes sense, and it's very difficult. Like, you fall in love, right? But from the outside, it's very self-qualifying in that, if you're a rusted-on Scotch whiskey drinker looking for an 18-year-old Scotch and you think that 21-year-old Scotch is better than 18-year-old Scotch, Starward's not the drink for you, right? Not because it won't live up to your taste expectations, but that's not the pillars that we've established the brand on. So what we try to do is be authentically ourselves by not being what Scotch and bourbon do so well.
Yeah, that makes sense. You just said something there about how when people connect with the brand, and I actually am very hesitant because we've got a journalist in the audience tonight, so I feel like I'm going to be rude to you, Danny. But Daisy, can you tell me how much it's important to connect with the media as a brand these days when you can just talk to your audience anyway? You can build them on social media. Like, do you need to still engage with journalists? Sorry, Danny.
Yes, you do. Yes, I love the media. And the media loves me. I made that joke before. 100% it's third-party authentication, It's so twofold. It's obviously new reach to new audiences, media and press, but also it's also telling your current following that it's okay to like you. People are really insecure and they want to know that it's okay to like you. So more people that are telling them it's okay to like you, the better. So yes, it's extremely important.
Did you just say twofold?
I don't know, did I?
You did, yeah. I've got spidey ears for twofold.
David, on the flip side, obviously, you've built your brand, you've got people engaged. How easy is it to lose them? Like, is it one bad drink at a bar and they're like, I'm never touching Starward again?
Well, yeah, and equally, it's hard to get them for the same reason. And your sensory experience is wide and varied. We were just talking about before we got on stage the trials and tribulations of bringing drinks to market, and
nightmare.
We've got a great sensory panel, and I was once upon a time part of that team before I got kicked off. I talk too much, apparently. But we used to have a reference whiskey, and 4 times out of 10, the reference whiskey wasn't what it tasted like yesterday, and that wasn't the whiskey, that was our palate, right? So, 4 times out of 10, the whiskey you're drinking is probably not as it would taste to you the next day. So that's a pretty daunting kind of strike rate to start off with. But it just makes that storytelling piece and the brand piece even more important. And what we try and do is kind of captivate people with the modernity of the brand and bring them on. But you're totally right, Jane. At the end of the day, the liquid has to stack up. We've got a few medals in the cabinet, so hopefully people kind of think to themselves, well, perhaps tonight it's me and not the whiskey, and give us another go.
Yeah, I think that kind of almost answers my question I was going to ask you next, which is just about, I guess, if you do have a brand that isn't yourself and isn't a venue, controlling the experience with it. But I think you might have kind of answered that quite neatly. So,
yeah, I mean, it's difficult, I think. And, one of the things that we're really proud of at Starward is that it's a great drink neat, right? Like after dinner, campfire, fireplace, tweed jacket, pipe, if that's your thing, go for it, right? Like whiskey as whiskey was intended. But one of the ambitions for Starward was to kind of think of whiskey equally as relevant before dinner as it is after, and that then means a drink. And so that even heightens the risk profile. But we think that like making Starwood a great, actor in a little scene that the bartender's creating is really exciting and gives them some autonomy to kind of craft something that fits the bill.
Daisy, do you think, just building on what David's saying, that people would have a different experience of your seltzer depending on whether they've been to Cantina or not? As that continues the Cantina brand, but it is also separate, I guess.
Yeah, I think releasing this was not a question you sent to
Sorry.
me, Jen.
I'm riffing.
I'm joking. It's fine. It has been surprising how many people have drunk this not knowing about Cantina OK. So I think the majority don't know the connection and are not really thinking about Cantina OK when they're drinking or thinking about mezcal or world-class margaritas. It's got to stand on its own two legs, and I hope it does.
It does.
Equally, I'm going to add something. Yeah. I think that, like, for those that do make the connection, they're living that experience vicariously through that drink at home. So maybe they can't make it out, but they can have a little Cantina OK experience at home.
Yeah.
Yep. Daisy, I want to dive into personal brand now because I think that's so interesting for a lot of people who may be working in bars, working in different aspects of our industry, and who kind of want to build something, but it doesn't have to be like venue or liquid. And you, I think, probably have quite a bit of experience in this in a past life, but also maybe with the staff as well. So I just kind of want to ask you how much people should worry about personal brand in our industry, and like what a professional version of someone is, and is that a brand?
I think they should worry about your personal brand. I mean, we've got Millie Tang in the audience. Sorry, Millie. But Millie's done an incredible job at building a personal brand, and the opportunities she's gotten off that is, I just think, it's been amazing and inspirational. I think it's really important. The more you promote yourself, obviously, the more opportunities you're going to get. I haven't done a very good job of it so far.
I don't know, you're here. I reckon that's...
Well, I've been a bit busy, but it's time consuming. I do get a lot of advice to our employees around building their own personal brand, talking about Storm Evans, there's Harrison Kenny at Bar Planet. I sit down with them, have a meeting. We do the same thing that I was talking about before about understanding their brand pillars as a person, and even down to posting a schedule, and when to celebrate what on what days of the week, and kind of building their personal brand. So I think it's really important. It's also really important for us because the more people that are promoting Mucho and working at Mucho and their own brand and their experience at Mucho is obviously an extension for Mucho. So I love helping people out in that area. I also feel like people don't prioritise it enough, and they should.
Yeah, interesting. David, can you answer how much branding for Starwood was set in stone when you launched, and how much has evolved over the years? So I think that's another thing that people maybe feel like they've got to have it all set out. So how much is flex?
So I was thinking about the 5 Ps that Daisy mentioned earlier, and maybe except for promotion, what I did was took 4 of those 5 and put them in a... before I even started the business, I wrote a media release, a fake media release, really answering those questions. So it took pages and pages of ideas and then put it onto one page, which then we can kind of encapsulate into something, singular. And funnily enough, a lot of what was written on the page in that first instance, we still do today. So this idea of a modern Australian whiskey that's, not tied down by tradition, looking forwards to the future of whiskey instead of the past of whiskey, flavour being at the forefront of every decision that we make. They're kind of pillars that really come down to purpose and our passion points as a brand and people that we recruit. How we get there, my God. This is year 17, which is still a baby for whiskey, but the world's a very different place, right? So when I started, it was the year the iPhone was launched. So, you know, the iPhone's not marketed the same way, right? So that's changed a lot. The how has, but the what hasn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'd like to ask you both. So Daisy first, then David. I guess as like kind of summation of everything, what you would do if you were starting out from day dot now, and anything you would change that you have done.
So we've got 5 venues, and I think that this is a really good example, I suppose, of nailing kind of a brand document before you launch a venue, and then launching a venue, and then doing the brand document afterwards. So Tio's and the Cliff Dive, the first 2 venues, and Cantina to an extent, I wasn't involved in the opening of those bars, and because Alex and Jeremy, my business partners, and also founders of Mucho, weren't kind of across marketing or branding. They were actually quite anti-branding and marketing at this point, which is a brand in itself, but whatever. They didn't think much about this. So I suppose the con to all of that is that we had to do a lot of unraveling and rebuilding, and it just cost money and time. Compared to Bar Planet and Centro, where I was heavily involved in creating those brand pillars and putting together that kind of marketing strategy and brand, it kind of popped off from the start. People understood what it was from day one. They knew how, the media knew how to talk about it, and obviously the money started rolling in quicker, and people, could engage with the brand a lot faster. So my advice is, if we were to go back 11, 13 years or whatever it was when Tio's opened, I wish that they sat down and did a brand doc so we didn't have to spend so much time unravelling all of it and building it back up again.
How long have we got?
Not long.
So, no regrets. Like, you got to kind of keep thinking optimistically and forward for me. But I'm going to tell you the things that are really important, and you can kind of decipher whether we did them or not. Clarity and alignment. So I was just saying earlier that, like, the day I said, fuck it, I'm going to start a distillery, I phoned 200 people and found 20 that would be interested in co-funding the exercise. And the reason why we're still here is because that alignment and clarity was clear to everybody.
So they knew what they were getting involved in, you're saying?
Which is like a mess. I didn't even have a brand name. I had an idea, right? So anything was upside.
How did you sell it then?
Well, I'm a bit persuasive, Daisy. I had an idea, and it was the what if, just kind of throwing it out there and saying, what if we could create a modern Australian whiskey that we could take to the world? We've proven at this point that we can make great whiskey. The Tasmanians have been doing that for a long time, I felt a little bit like it was paying double to see the Rolling Stones cover band when the Rolling Stones were half the price, but that's a different conversation. But for me, it was about modern Australian whiskey. What can we do to take that to the world and be exciting? So that was the first thing. Alignment, clarity in terms of purpose that Daisy kind of mentioned. And then hiring well. I'm not the original for this, but the greatest thing that we've done at Starward, the greatest achievement that we've had, isn't the cabinet full of awards or the delicious whiskey or the beautiful label. It's the team. Like getting those people together to kind of, get on that crazy rocket ship to Mars has been like a huge privilege of mine, and we wouldn't be here without it. It's very cliched, right? But you're nothing without the team around you, and don't compromise on that.
Nicely answered. Yeah. I don't know if there's been any questions. There has been. My little thing's not connecting. Sorry, guys. Give us 1 second. Because we definitely want to get some of your questions answered. Sorry. Oh, yeah. I'll give you that one. Thank you. Oh, great. Okay, cool. Great. I just, what I'll do is, I'll answer, if the person who's asked it has a specific person they want to address it to, and it's not written here, just let me know when I say the question if you want to stick your hand up, just in case it goes to the wrong person. But we've got a question here. Do you find that the identity you create with your brand needs to adapt to market trends to stay relevant and popular? So I guess about like pivoting and accommodating trends. I don't know if you both want to give that a quick go.
It's a tough question to answer. I mean, we're new. In the world of whiskey, we're a baby. So we are technically more relevant than, say, a 200 or 300-year-old brand is. And I've observed how sometimes they've tried to be a little bit more relevant and new. And just because Nonno can do disco doesn't mean Nonno should do disco.
Yeah, sure.
We've had a really good knack of turning what's not cool again. So I don't know I think if you base your decisions or identity or branding too much around trends, then you're not gonna last for long. Again, I suppose the purpose needs to be authentic, not just because you want to be on trend. I mean, Bar Planet, fuck, how many people told me they hated martinis when we're opening Bar Planet? That's all they're drinking now. And the smocks at Bar Planet, Jesus Christ, they all hated them. Now, I'm talking about the uniform. But no, I think that, no, fuck trends.
I agree.
You heard it here first. Daisy, this one is for you. Would you ever bring a new brand to Melbourne, and how do you think the two cities differ?
Just be careful.
So we actually came down a few years ago to look at doing a Cantina OK down here. Looked at a few sites, spoke to a few people. I think then we realised really quickly between my two business partners and I, I'm not married to both of them, but I'm married to one, but we've got 4 kids between us, 4 young children, and we're like, fuck, the logistics of actually opening a bar down here, I think it's just going to be too hard. It's already hard enough opening a bar in Sydney, but that was the main, I suppose, driver of not opening a bar in Melbourne. I was at Gimlet and Apollo Inn last night, and I was actually quizzing them about Sydney and Melbourne, and they were telling me, they were like, oh, Sydney, we love Sydney, it's amazing, the hospitality scene in Sydney, and I was like, really? I thought Melbourne hated us. Wow, this is really surprising. But to be honest, I haven't spent enough time here the last few years. I've got young kids, 5, 6 businesses, and I'm sorry, I've neglected Melbourne, and I don't really know what's going on. So last night was an insight, though, and I was so impressed. It was truly inspirational of an experience, and I want to spend more time down here, so let me know where I should go.
Maybe. We've got another one about naming and the most iconic parts of a brand being the name. And I just want to say, it's all fun and games. We just launched a brand called Grata, and now Prada are literally trying to sue us, so just be careful. Anyway, which is funny at least. It's funny, because it's Prada, so, you know. We should collab though. Anyway, you guys, how did you come up with the names? My business partner has come up with every name. I don't know. He just throws one out there, and then it kind of just sticks. I think the 3 of us just throw a lot of names out there, and the one that kind of lasts the longest is the one that stays. But it's amazing how a name becomes a brand, and you don't really think about it anymore. Every name we've come up with initially, we've been like, fuck, that's Cantina OK? They're like, it's OK's the most said word in the world. I was like, who gives a fuck? Bar Planet, I don't know, they're all pretty strange names when you first come up with them, but I suppose they settle into themselves, and that's it. What about you? How'd you come up with your name?
Not person, not place, not animal, which is easy, but then you knock out 99.9% of nouns in the English language. So that was the easy decision, because I wanted to be clear that this is not Scotch, this is not bourbon. And then it was like, okay, well, who doesn't like a star?
I love that. There you guys go. We are going to have to wrap it there, but I know there's a couple of questions we didn't get to, but the guys will be hanging around, so please feel free to tackle them, ask your questions. I'm sure they'd be delighted to answer, but thank you so much for coming to the first panel talk, and thank you so much.
Thank you.